But oftentimes we just
Oh, you already
stream
did
on
it.
Twitch, take
All right,
the
we might be
recording, and
live. We might be
put it on
streaming
YouTube.
live on YouTube. This
Let's see.
maybe is the first time we've actually tried this. We'll see if it actually works.
Digital film live. Oh, I think you're live.
Nice.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. It's working.
Okay. So it's been
It's
a
all good.
little while since we've streamed anything for our blog. I guess the main reason I'll say that is because on the traditional days we would stream in the past few months, we've just been chatting with other people as we've been preparing for our Vastarian event that just concluded. So I guess I'm happy to be streaming again, and I'm excited that I'm joined with Isaac and Nick, who both of which who attended the event, and we're here to chat about, I guess, just general thoughts about the event. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah, I can't believe that the stream seems to be working fine. Incredible. Now we can have all three people watch it. One of them
Hell
will
yeah.
be me.
I like it.
Yeah,
All
thanks
right.
for inviting us to come and chat. And it's so great to do it. Like, I literally got home like 13 hours, no, 23 hours ago. So
Yeah.
it feels very fresh.
Nice.
No, that's true. Yeah, we actually, since like 5 of the other people there Airbnb ended the day before, like 5 additional people stayed with us. Like Eli with the 3 of us, Brad, Eli, and Johnny. So 5 additional people,
Mhm.
and then we got to interview all of them. So that should be coming to a podcast soon, which I'm excited about. So
That's
lots of
awesome.
yeah. Well, with all that said, maybe we should just shift into the recording portion for the
Yeah.
podcast so we don't like repeat stuff and stay here too long. So, with that said, if people are ready, I'm going to start the recording and we can do this introduction that just occurred a second time.
Hell
Great.
yeah.
Pretty exciting. All right, yeah, I'm going to start. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dragged into Turbolasers, a miniature wargaming podcast from the people behind the blog Between the Bolter and Me. I'm your host, Eric Wire. My co host, Adam Wire, is here. Hey, Adam.
Hey everybody.
And I'm incredibly excited to be able to say that we're joined with 2 of our good friends who were at our Inc. 28 Vastarian event this weekend. Those are Nick, better known as Modern Synthesist or Mr. Pink.
Hi.
Yeah, hey, Nick. And then the other, Isaac, or better known as Weirding Way, and with all his cool navigators and whatnot.
Hello.
Yeah, as suggested, really great to have you. And even better, it was great that you were able to attend our Vastarian Inc. 28 event this last weekend. It was a lot of planning and on our part, but then a lot of work for people like you and everyone who attended it. But we're really glad that you were able to be there and make the event as cool as it ended up being.
Most certainly.
I think you guys did most of the work in making it as cool as it ended up being, but I'm happy to tag along.
Well, I guess the event, I think, in all of these types of things, well, maybe there was some initial creative spark from like us, but it's, I think, really the synergistic effort of everyone who comes together that really makes any of these group events so cool. And like, if it wasn't for Bill Ford, who really did a lot of the logistical things to find a space and help make most of the boards and do planning and help getting things printed, like it just wouldn't have happened at all. And then people like Johnny or Witchhammer Studios made this incredible lighthouse, which is kind of in the logo of the event. And Eli or Red Wet Skeleton made some really creepy demonic entities that really were special. And yeah, like, I don't know.
Now,
It's
Isaac,
been fun.
you developed the text for the Vastarian logo too. That's very cool.
Thank you. Yeah. In my day job, I'm a graphic designer, so it was it's always kind of a weird thing to bring the two halves of my life together because
That's awesome.
most of my graphic design things don't really look very Vastarian appropriate, but dug into some historical medieval black letter types and did kind of a typographic collage, which seems fitting for the kit bashing.
Oh, I
Yes,
misunderstood. I thought you drew the whole thing, like you did the lighthouse.
Oh no,
and everything.
I just did the word mark, as we'd say.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Who drew the actual lighthouse part?
I drew that.
That's right. Take your credit.
Awesome.
It's a beautiful lighthouse.
Thank
when
you.
You had left your sketchbook at
Hell yeah.
after you left on Sunday, and we kind of secretly paged through it to look at some of your sketches and noticed some little sketches of the
Try not to drool
Vastarian
too
logo,
much.
and it was pretty fun. But
I was
you got it back, so that's the important.
I was looking back through it thinking like, wait, what's in here? And yeah, I had forgotten that my very first Vastarian doodles were in there. So I'm glad you happened to see that page.
Well, so do we want to I guess for different listeners and stuff of the podcast, I feel most of the people who have been following our blog and podcast at least have some sense of what the Vastarian event was to entail. But I guess in general, it was an event focusing on an imperial world called Vastarian that is a cathedral world that, unlike a lot of other imperial worlds, was filled with different interpretations of like the imperial creed and how to best worship the emperor. And so, sort of in our mind, it was a good way for different people to explore ways in which normal humanity in this setting could venerate the emperor of mankind. And I guess the main narrative element that caused all these religions and cults to start fighting one another was spawned by the opening of the, I guess once Cadia fell in the newer lore of Warhammer 40,000, some of the different warp rifts and stuff like that kind of...
The Cicatrice Maledictum, perhaps? I don't remember.
You got it. Exactly. That's it.
Yeah, it sounds right.
Maledictum.
Yeah.
Every time I have to say it, I like hesitate and like I don't really know. But yeah, so when that rift opened and like I don't know, I think they referred to it as like the age of witches or something. There was like a lot of psychic unrest, so wanted to postulate like how something like that might influence a world that's really dominated by different interpretations of the religion, such that would give the opportunity for people to make different human-centric cults that all are or essentially loyal to the emperor, but in different ways, and how that might get pushed to an extreme in these terrible circumstances, and that all of those cults, someone within their midst became awakened as a psyker, and the congregations would sort of revere those people as like saints for the emperor, and then that would lead to some conflict. And it's actually a scenario that, or like a setting we've been developing for the last year or so, and have had a lot of posts on our blog with efforts to try to get other people involved in it and create their own models and lore for it, and maybe even play some games with like rule systems they're familiar with, just to try to encourage people to get excited and involved in the Inc. 28 side of the hobby. But this Houston event that Bill helped us run in Houston, Texas, was an effort to show like how an event could be run within the setting. So it was like the first quote unquote official event in the setting. And
but you guys ran like a previous contest and everything, didn't you? You had like a whole modeling contest where a bunch of people participated online.
Yeah, so we did because we initially revealed the whole setting as like an open invitational, just saying like, hey, we're going to be making models and lore and playing some games within the setting, and you all could too. And then held a contest for just getting people to submit and create their own cults, and about like 35-40 people submitted stuff, which was really cool. and this was kind of a culmination of some of the stuff we've been working at to have like an actual event and have it based on a particular thing that occurred during this, which specifically for this is some spire heads are trying to retrofit an ancient lighthouse into something that could act as a astronomicon, like a astronomicon beacon to help try to amplify the actual astronomicon from Terra to help communication with outside worlds and maybe stop the chaos unfolding on the planet. So Bill helped write a whole host of scenarios for different games to be played throughout, eventually culminating in the activation of this lighthouse beacon, and chaos ensued. But with
I
that
thought you
said,
guys wrote all the scenarios.
it was a collaborative effort.
Cool. Okay, so he made the
Bill,
boards and wrote the scenarios. That's impressive.
yeah, he has a lot of experience with writing scenarios and stuff. He put like for a lot of them, he put down some basic ideas. Then I went through and helped develop them a little, as well as writing some like little lore pieces to kind of go with them. But yeah, Bill was a really great impetus throughout the whole thing, always kind of pushing stuff on, like, hey, we need to get working on this. Like, if not, like things will get out of hand and get away from us, which ended up happening. But we all ultimately pulled it together.
Okay, so I think we've said enough about the event. Like, we would like to hear some things from both you, Isaac, and you, Nick. I guess how do we want to start? Like, we could talk about the different war bands or just general thoughts about
maybe the war bands you brought. Nick,
well,
do you have
actually,
any?
I just have one quick general thought. About the setting itself. I think I've been lucky enough to attend a bunch of these type of Inc. 28 meetups and seen like a whole bunch of different approaches to like. It's tough because you want a setting that's narrow and focused enough to actually be memorable and unique and get people thinking about stuff, but it also has to be broad enough to allow people to let their imaginations run wild and kind of find personal ways in and things that they want to make warbands about. And I think sometimes the settings seem somewhat not tied into the Warhammer 40,000 setting. Like they could almost be anywhere or in any universe, which is fine. But something I liked about your idea is that it's kind of about a couple of these like core ideas behind the setting of like the role of religion and in the Imperium, which is I think really interesting because although it's like a totalitarian religious state, it's actually doesn't really like it's pretty clear in the background that the Imperium doesn't really care that much about how people worship the Emperor, like as long as they're being submitting to the state effectively and giving their tithe of people, kind of like ancient Rome, they would, they're okay with a conquered colony having their own deities as long as those deities recognize that the emperor is above those deities. So it's very Catholic in a lot of its imagery, but it's actually more like a ancient Roman society in some ways. So I think this idea of a planet that is full of a lot of different styles of worshiping the emperor or the Imperium is fascinating and kind of very, very 40K in the best way. And then from the beginning of the setting, like kind of the ticking clock in the background has always been the emergence of psychers. That's like, if it's always on the edge of the apocalypse, like humanity's also always about to evolve into this next setting, this next level where maybe everybody's a psyker, maybe everybody becomes some type of star child being or whatever, And so you kind of plucked both of those things, which I hadn't seen in one of these meetups. So it was hard to resist.
Yeah, astropaths and stuff. It's really right up your alley, right? Yeah, and I guess touching on that, one thing that I really wanted to do with when developing the setting was to look at something that is very like quintessentially 40K, but often really isn't looked at that much because 40K ultimately has such a focus on like there are 13 different armies such that it can sometimes get somewhat diluted, and each army is sort of a caricature of something. And this, I wanted it to be very focused on a particular thing, almost like the core of 40K, and that is this totalitarian religion. But it's one that I don't think ultimately isn't really developed that much, other than sort of this hyperbolic, horrible thing.
We all know
yeah,
that's because of Space Marines.
I mean, that's kind of true.
Now we're just trying to rile Nick up, but I was going to say that, you know, in a way, the 40K universe would totally make sense and work perfectly if there were no aliens in it at all. Also, that like the setting,
leaving. See you guys later.
It's so much borrowed from Dune, where there are no intelligent life, you know, besides the sandworms and other maybe animals. And so one of the weird things about 40K, which makes it so fertile, I think, for people to play with, is it contains everything. So you have that type of, you know, humanity is its own worst enemy kind of motif going on, but also there's ancient alien horrors lurking beyond the stars, and also there's orcs, you know, and all those other things. But so you could have I was interested to see how Nick would handle this. It would be tough to work Tyranids into the setting, but I think maybe there's a little hint of it in there. I don't. They just looked like fishermen who were just worshiping the emperor, as far as I could tell.
Yeah, right.
So,
nothing fishy going on there.
In contrast to Isaac's experience, where he's been to a bunch of these things, I've never been to a single one of these things, and I've just been like aware of them, but I didn't really understand all the Ink 28 stuff at first. Oh, they're the Fisher Boys. Yeah, and I've honestly, my inroad to Ink 28 has been you guys and the Dragged into Turbolasers podcast, the Between the Bolter and Me, like blog and your Instagram presence and your streams and all that stuff. And you basically sold me on Ink 28. Like, I was already curious, but just like with your coverage of like Gelida. I used to call it Gelida. Gelida. Yeah, it's Gelida, apparently. Cody corrected me.
Yeah.
And then like Martin's setting, like the Rod of Hondius, and like all those cool, like all that cool stuff. It just got cooler and cooler and sounded more and more fun. And then it was actually the Mordheim event that Bill ran 2 years ago in Houston in 2022. And your guys' coverage of that. I was like, oh man, I gotta get on this. Like, I can't keep thinking this is cool and not going to one of the events. I just need to go to an event. So it was that one, the Mordheim event, that convinced me that I needed to participate the next time something happened. So I was, as soon as like you started putting together Vastarian and I knew Bill was involved, I was like, I gotta be there. But because Isaac mentioned the whole alien thing, I thought that there was like no Xenos allowed, so I was trying to like sneak in some Xenos with like this Gene Stealer cult that's up on the screen here, like the Fisherman cult, which was a collaboration actually with Hydra in Germany. And I thought that they would be a good way to be like, yeah, we're totally human, no worries. Yeah, we worship the Emperor below the waves. But then like, I roll up and Grant's there with a friggin' like grots on motorcycles, but he had a really good explanation for how he got his Xenos into the setting. But
expect an episode of the podcast, like an interview with him, where he discusses some of that. But I guess part of that, for me, two things. One of which, Bill's Mordheim event, and having gone to Mordheim 2019 with Alexander Winberg and such. Playing Mordheim more, that was a major inspiration for this setting, because I really appreciate how Mordheim is much more low fantasy than most of Warhammer. And in the core Mordheim rulebook, there are only like 5 factions. A lot of them are just humans. There's humans, Skaven, vampires, and like the possessed, but they're not just like, it's chaos. And it's very... it's just low fantasy. There aren't even skeletons. Like, it's zombies, and how like human focused that is. It allows for, there's still flexibility for people to create cool and interesting things. It kind of grounds it slightly more in realism, where you could be like, well, maybe these zombie-like creatures, maybe they're actually real. And I really like that. I mean, we talk a lot about realism and the stuff we create and whatnot, and I like that. And part of having gone to Bill's thing, it's like, you know what? Like, we should just develop a setting that is kind of like that, that is really focused on a thing that still allows flexibility for things, but isn't just like Space Marines are here, like Nurgle's here, Tyranids are here. And I was fine with the fact of like maybe having Gene Stealer cults or things like that in it, but doing it in a somewhat subtle way, which Games
Yeah.
Workshop isn't very good with subtle. But more than anything, I didn't want just flat out like, and this is the Nurgle cult. Like, I didn't really want chaos to be there. I mean,
Mhm.
I guess spoilers, some demons show up, but even those aren't like obviously like that's corn, or like
Yeah,
these
they're not
are,
like
there's all these
bloodletters. They're like
pustules, and
weird,
like I
creepy
like that
creatures.
to me. Yeah, I wanted it like to be able to show like there is interest in that sort of nuance without having to like dial it up to 11 and be like, there's just tons of skulls and blood and axes. You get it's corn, right? Like, and yeah, so.
Yeah.
Well, I
But
think
yeah, with all
I was gonna
continue,
say
sorry.
the fisherman cult and whatnot is like I kind of think is a neat nod towards a lot of things, and um like who knows what's lurking beneath the waves, and like certainly here on Earth, like
Kind of
we've
have that Innsmouth look to them, I might say.
So the I guess I'll just we came up with a name for it. They are the esoteric fellowship of this joke works better on paper than by voice. Dehay Gahan.
Dagon.
It's Dagon, but
Yeah,
we tried to
Dagon.
disguise
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So there's very like in the Smith like inspiration there because Hydra loves
Mhm.
Cthulhu stuff. I love Cthulhu stuff, Lovecraftian whatever, and just like it worked so well. Like because how the genesis of the cult is that Hydra decided to convert fishermen Gene Stealer cultists for Kit Bashember, which happened a number of years ago, and the idea with Kit Bashember would be that you're supposed to do a war band or like a 10-person unit
Mm-hmm.
over the month of November, and every 3 days there's a different prompt. So like one of them is like do a heavy weapon person, do like a medical person or something like that. So he created these for that, and I loved them, and then he agreed to send them to me so that I could paint them. So I just wanted to really lean into the nautical theme that he had created with the models, and blend that with the idea of Vastarian. And because so much of the Vastarian lore is centered around the like this idea of a lighthouse,
Mhm.
I pictured like the idea of like light, because lighthouses are nautical as well. Like it all seemed to like work
Yeah.
together really well. And then of course like the Shadow over Innismouth, like the Lovecraft story, is all about like creepy critters coming out of the ocean and the humans that are kind of turning into like these nautical these undersea
Mhm.
creatures, and they have cults and stuff. It just all seemed to work really well together.
The
And
conversions are really cool, and I find it's neat that like a lot of the pieces are clearly Gene Stealer cultists, but with just some subtle conversion, like how they're painted with kind of like the bright yellow, like kind of rain slicker type stuff, and the blue beanies and the hats. Like I feel it instantly gets across that idea of these are nautical people that are out on ships and so forth. And really, I feel distances it from the like these are obviously Gene Stealer cultists. Do you see the Gene Stealer eyes and their Gene Stealer claws? Like you can
yeah,
still get that impression without like going full bore into it. Like, do you see the ridges on their foreheads?
yeah, yeah. They're all wearing hats. Good way to hide them.
Yeah.
It feels more secretive and it feels more clandestine that way.
Mhm.
And honestly, like 80% of that came from Hydra. Like just the way that he modeled them, it was really inspiring. And only one of them, like the one who played my saint, the lady that's got the lantern.
Mhm.
If you look very close, like her arm's holding up the lantern, and there's a little tiny like scything talon arm coming out from under her
Mhm.
jacket, but it's you'd blink and you'd miss it. So
That's
that's the
cool.
only
Yeah, I didn't see
real.
it.
Yeah, no, he did such a great job, and even like he sculpted barnacles onto them, like on the bottom of their robes and stuff. So that's what inspired the like kind of like green
Mhm.
algae and white speckled look. So it really, I joked at the event that it wasn't really my cult. I was like their valet, or I was like the person that was like birthing the cult. Like Hydra conceived of it, and then I had to like birth it with some lore and some paint. But I did make the creepy fish thing. That the weird shrine.
I love the creepy fish thing, and
It's great.
the frame that it's holding up is really nicely done too.
As are all the bases, like the little wooden planks and the nice kind of
They're sick.
algae, moldy boards and such.
So I have to give my wife credit for that. She did the bases when I was freaking out about being done, and she actually really enjoys like the scenery basing part of it, and was cross with me that I hadn't pushed her into service earlier. She's like, "Why didn't you get me to do this? I could have done this. Like, you should have gotten me to do this way a long time ago." So she did a great job.
She's really good at it.
Yeah.
I particularly like the basin, and I definitely heard other people talking about
Yeah, they're really
Great.
how
great.
great the basin
I'll let
was.
her know.
Really fits
She'll be
the
happy to hear.
theme, and it's a little different from like they're
Mhm.
not just like, oh, I took the Zone Mortalis plastic bases and put Dirty Down Rust on them or whatever. And nothing really against that. Like hell, I do it, but
And
it's
if you
nice
want to
to
make them
see
at
it.
home, they're super easy. I don't know how well this is going to work, but it's just like wooden coffee stir sticks
Mm-hmm.
from like a cafe, and I used No More Nails to glue them to plasticard, and I just cut them into different, like same length, but I staggered all the sections so that they would like kind of overlap. And yeah,
And the
that's
the
it.
like algae sort of stuff, is that from one of Dirty
Dirty
Down's
Down.
products?
Yep, that's
Yeah.
moss.
That looks
Dirty Down
good.
moss.
I feel that particular product is a little harder to do in a subtle way that looks good than like the rust, but I think there's a good job here of having it emphasize and add additional little pop of color in like a good way.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, really cool. Well, Isaac, can you talk a little bit about your warband? I feel anyone to see them would probably instantly be able to recognize your designs, and I know my wife was really excited to see them. Like, it kind of
That's
brings me
awesome.
back to the Pilgrim game. You actually sent a little beaconite with this
Yep,
fun little walking contraption there, and
exactly. Yeah, this is a kind of a return to a long brewing project. I've been working on my Navigator households for a very long time. Basically, it was right when I got back into the hobby. Oh my God, I don't know how long ago it was. 10 years ago. Um,
yeah,
yeah, time is very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing I did was I had been thinking for many years about like what's like an underexplored corner of the 40K universe that there's room to kind of make some define some kind of new aesthetics and bring in some other interests of mine. And I'm a huge fan of Dune, so Navigators as this kind of commonality between Dune and 40K, which is
Games Workshop
totally
trailers
coincidental, I'm
too.
sure. It seemed like a really interesting area to explore because they've been so there's like two miniatures that have ever been officially made of Navigators or something, and even the artwork. Yeah, the artwork is pretty. There was like a Rogue Trader drawing of a guy lying down in like a crash couch type thing with like a weird bill on top of his head. A little expansy. I know you're a fan of Expanse, Nick, but
Sick. I gotta look that up.
it's but like very few. So it was a chance to do something of my own. But the first set of Navigators I did were very kind of more John Blanche style, more David Lynch's Dune style, very like warm colors and a lot of greens and golds and oranges. And I didn't actually, at the beginning, I wasn't going to show any actual Navigators. They were all going to be in these enclosed kind of power armor suits, which would kind of make more sense. Like they're supposed to be secretive. Why would they going to be out there? But eventually, I couldn't resist it and wanted to explore what a Navigator would look like outside of the suit. And so then that led to making like a big-headed Navigator and then some baby-faced Navigators. But this kind of particular aesthetic offshoot of the Navigator project goes back of like kind of the white armor and the kind of the more kind of Mobius style, more NASA punk style. That was something I first did for the Curse of the Alabaster game that Shibboleth put on in California, which is also where I met the Wire Brothers for the first time.
True.
It was the first time I traveled for one of these events. I had been to Adepticon to play just like 40K with my navigators a couple times, but it was really fun. So yeah, I actually hadn't worked on navigators for a while. I had been doing some Horus Heresy kind of nostalgia stuff, making some Blood Angels, and then making some mechs for Steve's awesome Flames of Orion setting. So yeah, when you put out the call for this, I was like, I don't know, should I come up with a new cult? It would feel weird to go back to something that I feel like I've done so much, but I'm really glad I did, because I think it was a chance to I've learned new things from working on these other projects and have kind of new technical things, but just like different design sensibilities. And even kind of intentionally folded in motifs that I've played with before and try to kind of like recombine them in different ways. So like my Saint ended up having this big kind of long cylindrical head armor thing capped with like kind of spheres, which is very much like the navigator I made for the Curse of the Alabaster event, which is just like a walking containment tank. But this time on top of a robed body, which was like the other navigator I made. So, lots of little kind of internal
Nods.
motifs getting.
Yeah.
I feel it was kind of a joy to see it, having followed your work for a while and seeing that progression, and even like your progression in painting, and like you always have such a good choice of color palettes and such, and
Thank
to
you so
see
much.
that all come together, and like, I don't know, it seems to be elevated from the stuff you've done before, which is or to me saying a lot, because it's, I don't know, so cool and awesome to begin with. But
Thanks.
I don't know, I love them. And from the little, I've been going through all the photos I took, which is over like 1,000, and man, your navigator, I really gravitated to them. They're very photogenic, so they showed up in a lot of photos. And
I love it. I will say there's something I learned from the first time, like trying making, like I made all those, my first batch of navigators, the Merzitano household, like taking pictures of them, actually gaming with them at like Adepticon. I remember just like looking around, and like me and Mead from Ex Profundus, we met up, just the two of us, the first time. Like I think was technically the first Inc. 28 game at Adepticon, was just us meeting in person for the first time, playing just the two of us, and like the open gaming thing. But he was such a madman. He had come out from New Jersey with like a whole table of incredible ash waste terrain that we played on. But like my models just kind of blended in because they were all mostly dirty and brown.
Okay.
And realizing that like that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with like a dirty brown model, but like if I'm conceiving them as primarily game pieces, like I wanted something that would look good on a table and look good at arm's length and look good under less than ideal lighting conditions. And so it's like, are you painting for a display cabinet? Are you painting for the Instagram photo? Are you painting for the game? And I think everything's totally valid, but one of the reasons, I think, a lot of tonal contrast, a lot of white surfaces, some shiny bits, like
I feel you balance that well, in that now they both look good in photographs and from a distance as well as up close. I guess it's worth noting that if you go to our blog, along the top we have some kind of keyword sort of things, and you can find the Curse of the Alabaster there, and you should be able to find some pictures of that older navigator household, which is kind of cool, that that event in 2016, the end of 2016, was also how we came to know of Eli, or Red Wet Skeleton. He
That's right.
created some kind of weird chaos spawn, like this interesting cult, and sent those models to be used in the event. And
if I remember correctly, he actually sent them to me because I was closer to him, and then I flew out with them. Or maybe
I
that was
think that
he sent
sounds
something
right
to me. Maybe that was for an Adepticon one year. But
I think you're right. button it humorously, and maybe we'll get to this a bit or show a photo or two on the stream. But that very spawn thing showed up in this event,
It
and
did.
like it's kind of a
Oh,
nice
that
full
thing.
circle. That
Wasn't that for
brutalized
Mordheim?
you. It was not,
No, it
Oh,
was
I
for the
thought that was
Curse
when
of
he
the
made the red wet
Alabaster.
skeleton. Oh, okay, never mind. Sorry. That
but
thing's amazing. Love that thing.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it was both of the war bands just amazing to look at and fun to engage with. Um, I guess with that in mind, does anything stick out to you from the event, or any moments that were particularly cool, or anything of that nature, particularly that it's only been like a day or two since the event? Like, are there any like little details that stick out that might get lost or could be hard to um tie
Well,
down if there aren't
before
pictures
we
or
move on
something?
from Isaac's cult, I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I showed these miniatures to my wife Isaac before I jumped on. I was like, "Hey, check these out!" And like she's like aware of Warhammer stuff, but she was commenting. She's like, "It's so clear that he has his own style, like that it was really standing out to her." And she was asking me what it was called. Would you describe it as NASA punk or?
I mean, that's a term I feel like I've heard get tossed around, even talking about like the Leagues of Votan.
Oh yeah,
I must admit, when they were first released, I was like, am I gonna make more astronaut inspired
yeah.
Yeah.
stuff? Because like they're definitely mining that same world. So like I definitely have looked at a lot of, you know, Googled like old spacesuits, cosmonaut suits,
Yeah.
looked at a lot of that stuff for visual references. But a lot of it is like just like stuff that I like.
Yeah.
Get it as kind of an excuse to get brought in. So like some of that is stuff like Mobius, the French
Mhm.
comic artist and
Yeah.
comic book artist. But just like 80s sci-fi movie practical effects and like
Yeah.
Star Wars style model making, and kind of trying to look at some of those approaches and techniques. But yeah, like I pull in lots of stuff. So like since I have a captive audience, I'll just go ahead. This is my chance. I sit in my attic for hours thinking about these things. But like my Think, the one with the big white head, that went through a lot of different versions. Like at one point, that whole headpiece was upside down, and it was actually
Mhm.
kind of had a torso coming out of the other way and looked kind of like a seahorse. I
Yeah.
was trying to think about like nautical motifs a little bit, because of the lighthouse theme and because of space as the sea, if they're navigators. But I thought about whales a lot as kind of like a motif to play around with navigators. I think maybe because of Star Trek 4 or whatever, when
yeah.
it turns out whales have been in contact with alien whales in like a cool tube
Yeah.
shaped ship, and I saw that as a kid, and that always stuck with me. But I was also I realized that if I flipped this thing over, it kind of looked like a profile of a whale,
Mhm.
who are, they float through a seemingly empty space at
Yeah.
vast distances, communicating with sounds that we can't perceive. So there's like you can draw relationships with navigators. But then I was like,
Mhm.
maybe this is carrying a religious symbol of a spaceship. So it's like an engine. So it has like part of its
Mhm.
helmet is an engine that isn't meant to be functional, but like representing the motive power of a ship.
Mhm.
And then the other inspiration was I've always loved the Brian Froud's design of the Mystics in Dark Crystal,
Yeah, yeah.
um, who are like the opposite of the Skeksis. They don't get as much attention, I think, because they don't have a name that's like Mystic means a lot of different things. If they had given them a cool name like Skeksis,
Mhm.
they probably would occupy a larger place in pop culture. But they have that low body plan and forearms and long cloaks to kind of hide the puppeteer inside, and they're just amazing. So it was fun to kind of weave. I always weave in little personal visual references. It's not like I was thinking of that when I started it, but while I'm
Yeah.
sitting there in front of the pile of bits, start seeing things and think like, oh, that would be cool if I did that. And
Well, I
before you
feel
know it,
you're very adventurous in like your creations. Like once you have an idea or concept, like you're willing to push that and not just like, well, that would be a lot of work, or this bit doesn't really work. That like you're willing to push it. You're willing to do some sculpting or things to like achieve that vision. And not everyone's about to do that. And like Nick, you're kind of the same. Like you are truly willing to sculpt and like go that extra mile. I think both of you, like your style is obvious. You have a style and things can be picked out partially because of that creative vision and willingness to like, I don't know, go for it per se, which is cool.
Actually,
I got to thank Isaac because like the thing that keeps playing in my mind is him being on your podcast and saying, "Don't save your bits. If you have a bit that you love,
with them.
you have to use it." Yeah,
that's
like
true.
that. Yeah, like that's key. The other question I had, Isaac. Go ahead. Sorry.
Along those lines, I'll post. I haven't posted any of these yet. I was been just kind of focused on making them, but I'll probably try to start posting some work in progress photos. But
that would be great.
That model with the bull helmet over on the right there. That
so cool.
An example of that.
I saw it from behind, and I'm like, "Why is there?" And I saw it from the front. I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like the far right. If you're looking at that picture on YouTube, if you're watching the YouTube video, the far right.
If you're on a podcast and you're not seeing it, But so that started. That's not the type of thing that I think I would have come up with just sitting down drawing designs. For me, it came out of the process of making, which is always really satisfying. But for most of the time I was working in this warband, my plan was the leader was going to be riding a giant bull, because I like this idea of like somebody in a space helmet on a mount, 40K at its core is like technology mixed with medieval stuff. So I actually took the body of a beast that I sculpted for Cody Magus Brewer's Kingswood game, and that had like an owl face on a bison's body, but I thought let's make it more believable in the 40K setting. So I sculpted a cow head to go on it, like an ox head. And the cloak that you see on that model was actually on the model that was riding. It had like a huge cloak that draped all over the bison, and it looked pretty cool, but something about it wasn't coming together, and it took me a while, but finally I was like, let's just break it apart. And I cut the head off, broke the cloak off, started a whole new leader, which led to what I have is both the saint and the leader of the warband, the guy standing in the little orb. But and then at the end I had this pile of a cow head I had spent like a while sculpting, and all this cloth I had spent sculpting, but was able to do a kit bash with my own sculpted bits and end up with something that now I think is actually my favorite model in the warband. So
I think
when in doubt,
they're really cool.
Thanks.
Like they really speak to me. Like they also make the little shotguns in general are pretty big for like modern weaponry and stuff. And in this case, like it sized really well for such a model, and it looks, at least in my mind, very believable. And it's a cool, subtle pose.
I had a different shotgun there for a while. There was like a different, cooler, kind of more fancy looking shotgun, but it was bigger.
Yeah.
And I definitely knew my audience. I couldn't come to this event with an oversized gun.
Well, I mean, yeah.
So if you look at the whole warband,
they're certainly
the
smaller.
Gun.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Like generally, like full size shotguns are big, and they're one of the few weapons in Warhammer 40,000 that sometimes they're sized okay.
I think it's a Gene Stealer cult one. I think I saw the same one on your models.
Yeah, they were some of the best.
I was going to say, I think Adam previously said those were acceptable. Those ones can live. Yeah. The Gene Stealer shotguns.
I sliced off the barrel and replaced it with a smaller little metal bead, like a crimping bead thing that I had, so it had a hole in it already.
That's often.
Well, I think, Isaac, you have a tendency, like you make the models a little bit bigger than kind of the standard GW model. And that really helps, like you kind of trying to proportion them better helps them. They grow into the weapons.
Yeah. Well, I have a quick question.
They're a little big.
I have a quick question. The little one, the model in the back with the statue or whatever on their back, is there a story behind them?
Yeah, so that model started off having the orb that my leader is standing on was on that model's back. Just as like the idea is it's like carrying some piece of, the idea is none of these spacesuits are functional. They maybe don't even understand what spacesuits are for, but it's like a cargo cult type of revering them for their symbolic purpose. So I thought like maybe he's carrying a satellite on its back, something like that. But then when I used that, I thought that would be a cool platform for the
Actually,
leader. And you should say,
yeah.
those spheres are 3D printed designs from this really great designer who I'm blanking on his name right now because I get confused between the real name and username handle. But I'll make sure to send you guys a link so you
Yeah,
can
we can
provide
put a
and I'll
link
share
in
it on
it.
Instagram.
Well, actually,
But they're like really cool shapes, and I used his jetpacks too for the big robot and a
that's
lot of the
cool.
backpacks. But so yeah, then that sculpture is actually that's from a Colony 28 Kickstarter
Oh, okay.
campaign.
Yeah. That's
One of the
cool.
civilians, and so it was like a civilian holding like a mother holding a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it's like a weird creepy little baby. And at one point that was going to be my leader, and so like I was putting different heads on that, but the scale was a little small for my other gangs, and I was like, I kind of already have enough models, but I kind of want to include this one. And I realized, I could just turn it into a statue and put it on the back of this other model.
That's cool.
But the fluff justification is that's a statue of the emperor as the mother of the Astronomicon, so that like
That's cool.
the baby has just like a halo for a head, so that it's the emperor giving birth to the Astronomicon.
This is a pretty big aside, but are people familiar with, so I forget the name of the area, but on Earth, sort of close to Australia, there's like a big portion of the ocean that just based on like the currents and all this stuff, like essentially nothing lives there. Are people familiar with this? And that's where like most like space agencies, they crash their satellites and shit.
It's the graveyard.
Yeah, they crash them there because largely because just based on the characteristics of that area, like essentially nothing lives there. So it's like, well, we can just crash all our satellites and other stuff into the ocean there. So very interesting.
That is interesting.
If I remember,
about the space graveyard, I didn't know where it was.
Yeah, that's very cool. It's like, I think it's below Australia to like the west a little. I'd have to look it up again, but it has a name, and like all the different space agencies crash their satellites and other shit in there.
I'm getting Spacecraft Cemetery.
Ooh.
Point Nemo. Oh, it's Point Nemo.
That's it.
Point
That
Nemo.
is what it's called. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Cool.
There was a let me see. There's a cool there's a cool Instagram account which now I'm trying to think what the name of the Instagram account is, but the person there wrote a book called Spooky Lakes, and it's just a book about different creepy bodies of water. And on their Instagram account, during the month of October, they talked about essentially 31 days of different like haunted hydrology. And so one of the days they talked about that, and like there's a lot of weird stuff on Earth related to water. So Spooky Lake Month and a little Spooky Lake book.
Thank you for the tip. I'm gonna check this out.
Yeah, like it's amazing.
Question, Isaac, is this your first time doing the golden helmets? Because they reminded me of they're definitely not navigators in new Denis Villeneuve doing.
Yeah, so no, that was actually goes back to even before the Curse of the Alabaster, as part of my original navigator army that you can search on Daka and find very old posts.
I think I've seen it, man. Dude, I've been loving your shit for a long time. I think I've seen it.
But I wanted like a gold chrome thing, so I was making that was just one model in that army was a Beaconite priest, a Beaconite prophet, and so I was just building out the army and trying to do versions of the Inquisitor archetypes, but that could be tied to navigators. And so it's like, so what's like a mystic for a navigator? And so the idea is that it's somebody who's not a navigator, maybe not even a part of the household, but that worships the navigators because they, are instrumental for space travel. So that you could imagine people would pray pray to the Astronomicon. People who pray to the Astronomicon might gravitate towards navigators. But that gold product is a Japanese product made by Hasegawa, the modeling company. It's like a cling, stretchy, adhesive film that like comes on a backing, and it's used largely for like automotive modeling, like larger scale, like hot rods with like chrome finishes or something. But so I used it for that, and then liked it so much I made that model for the Pilgrim, and then went back and made like a whole unit of Beaconite warriors that you can see on Ex Profundus, I think still. But
I just pulled it up.
Yeah, but so
I with
I
like a crazy cannon with the gold.
Exactly. But when I saw the Denis Villeneuve, I don't think those are navigators in the movie, but they are.
They're not. Yeah, they're adjacent.
But they are
I think.
Spacing Guild. I think they're Spacing Guild emissaries because they arrive on the planet with the Emperor, and I had a little freak out because they were like wearing white Catholic robes with gold chrome masks, and I think it's a case of convergent evolution where if you had a mood board where you were combining space travel and religion, it's a pretty obvious connection to make. But so for a while I was like, I saw a lot of people then making models based on those, and then a lot more people making bubblehead models and all general types of spacesuit stuff. And then Leagues of Voton, for a while I was like, that's it, I'm not making any more astronaut models. It's played out. But
isn't it also like you're talking about cosmonaut suits and NASA suits, like didn't they have a gold foil thing that they could put down on the suits?
Yeah, it's like it's a polarized sun filter or something that can flip down.
Just a quick aside, the Spooky Lake person, their name's Geo Rutherford, and they wrote a book called Spooky Lakes, and they have an Instagram account. You should check it out. I think I sent a link to some of that to both of you on Instagram, but really cool.
Yeah, we can include the link.
Just pulled it up.
Stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So I see in the comments, Shane is asking, the material was self-adhesive, but now that I made my first model, it's made like 8 years ago, it does slowly shrink over time, and kind of retract and peel back. So it might need some. It's not archival, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
that's
still cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Sorry, you'd asked, I think Adam, I don't know if it was Adam or Eric, you asked like what stood out about the event. Vastarian. As it was my first one of these events, what really stood out to me was being able to meet the real humans behind the miniatures, because though I may have like followed some of these folks, and sometimes I've been fortunate enough to see them speak on like your podcast or anything like that, or hear them speak, it was a different thing to be in a room with them and like to see like the humans behind the models. And it was such a amazing experience that I would highly recommend that if anyone out there is listening to this, if anyone's interested in Ink 28 or Mordheim or any of this kind of like scene events, you should just go to one and just meet these people, because like, I don't know why, but like Johnny Lashley, like Witchhammer Studios, he's just like the most lovely, fantastic, kind, warm hearted, lovely man that I just want to always have wisecracking behind me for the rest of my life. Like, and like you see Johnny Lashley and he's like tatted up and he's like making crazy faces and he's running around making giant lighthouses, but he's just like the nicest dude. And I just had that experience over and over again. Like people like Gage and people like Shane, not you, Shane, not cool Shane in the chat, but other Shane who only makes Space Marines. I'm like, this guy's gonna be boring. He was awesome. He was so cool. So just like seeing the humans and being able to appreciate both their art in person and their personalities, I love that.
Yeah, I mean that is amazing, and I feel that element, that community element, is a large portion of why I think we're still doing this podcast. We still have the blog, and why we want to do this. Because if it was just following new Games Workshop releases or something, like it kind of gets boring. Like I don't care, as it seems to get increasingly more corporate and profit driven and such, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
And boring. Less granular, less weird, just boring. Like 10th edition 40K, I hope you haven't gone anywhere near it because it's just boring. They took all the fun granular stuff out, and they're like, "Oh, you don't want that. That just complicates things." Like, it's just getting junky. So this is where the cool stuff's happening. This is where the like unique stuff's happening.
Just the passionate people is like just amazing, and yeah, like just everybody that I've met has
and
been
also like
awesome.
Anyone who has experience of like tournament play and like going to tournament organizers and asking tournament organizers about rules and stuff. I've done a little bit of that. So I would go up to Eric or Adam and I'd be like, "Hey, so this one rule, how does this work?" And you'd literally be like, "I don't fucking care. Just do whatever's fun. Just do whatever makes it cool." And it was so like freeing. And watching Isaac like in his game, he's like, "So I've decided that I have a psychic power where I'm gonna summon our ancestor from the warp to support us." And like, did you just make that up on the fly? Like when you were in the church and you were fighting like Eli's awesome demons, like you didn't plan that, right? You're just like, "Hey, this is a cool idea."
No, yeah, if I had planned that, I would have made special markers to represent that. But basically, I think that was, I forget which of the brothers suggested it to me, but as these giant demons were coming down, we were clearly outclassed.
Oh yeah, that was me.
Yeah. We had all built pretty low powered, kind of Mordheim level. Like, I had one flamer, one shotgun, and one auto pistol were my weapons basically. And that's not going to cut it against a giant apocalypse demon. But so I was trying to think like, well, what's in previous games I've like made like a vortex marker, like the old fashioned second edition vortex grenade, because that seemed like the type of psychic power a navigator could have. But so then I had brought one of my navigator busts, and then the Wire Brothers already had a navigator bust there, and it's like, well, what if you could set up like a multi-turn thing where you could place a marker, and then if you get two of them, the idea is then their gaze would look into each other's warp eyes and cause like a feedback loop that would open like a direct path of void. Basically thinking of in Neverending Story, there's those like sphinxes that Atreyu has to pass through, and they have laser beams. So yeah, just that game was really fun because basically things started breaking down and the rules weren't really adequate to dictate how it would work, but we had enough framework that we were able to work it out. And Shane was kind of stepped into roleplay as the NPCs, which are these amazing models. The Cult of the Autogyre, I think is one with
Gyro Choir, the church
Gyro Choir
that Nikki created.
Yeah, made by Nikki, and they were such cool models. But then Shane kind of really inhabited them, and I got to see what playing with like an actual role player was like, I think, because he started kind of suggesting things, and so then we came up with like a framework for how to like negotiate communication between my psyker and that. But we borrowed a mechanic that I had played against in an earlier game, the wizard fight mechanic, which you probably have covered on this podcast by this point, I'm guessing. But
a little bit, yeah. Well, this might actually be the first time we'll talk about it. I don't know. Like, we might have this podcast first because we spent some time at the beginning talking about the setting for people who aren't aware of it. But
let this be a teaser that you're going to deliver on later.
Yeah,
gonna learn about some wizard fights.
One thing and this is something that's very, it's like hard to convey, particularly for people who have like grown up and have primarily been really focused on codex books and rules, and like that's kind of how you start. But why throughout posts about like how you could start getting involved and play games, a big focus I tried to convey is this idea that use a rule system that you're familiar with, that you're so familiar, like you don't have to look at rules, and like you're more primed to be in a position that if a cool idea comes to you, like you can just go with that. Because part of this and having these huge crazy demons and stuff was like we wanted to get to a point that you would step outside of like, well, do I need a 6 to do this, and think more broadly, like, and shift it more into a role playing experience with miniatures to like, let's just be creative. Like I've spent maybe months building this stuff, and certainly the last day or two getting into this world and playing games. Like how would I approach this and result in something that's like elevated and cooler than just like, well, if I roll a 6 and another 6, then like it has to work, right? And I think that's fun. And even like the thing you were talking about, Isaac, about using those like little navigator statues, like it was fun to kind of see that even evolve throughout the event, in that because you painted one of your bigger navigator busts and I painted the one that I still had. I thought like, this is a perfect opportunity to finally paint it. And then you ended up using it in I think your second game when uh wizard fight went awry for pretty much
That's
everybody,
right.
and
Yeah, I forgot about that.
like your navigator was sadly sucked into the warp and replaced by like a sort of a manifestation of the Beaconites ancestors. And like I thought that was like you're very clever and kind of coming up with fun thoughts on things that are occurring. And yeah, actually there's a picture on the screen if you watch this on
Nice.
YouTube
Yeah.
of the little statue and the remnants of Isaac Psyker after
Catastrophe.
perils of the warp thing happening. And then it was
They
fun
did
like
get
that.
better, luckily, but yeah, they suffered
Yeah.
a massive perils roll. What you were saying about the rules kind of breaking down when approached with the demons, that's really smart, because that's what it felt like as a player, that like we didn't have the framework to deal with these things. And so that is a nice kind of game recreation of the narrative idea that the rules of reality are breaking down just as the rules of the game are no longer
like
sufficient.
we spent a lot of time trying to think about like how we could have the last core game work, and we didn't want to define it too much because we knew like the people there are like really creative and it would be more satisfying if people came to result. But we wanted to have some different things happen to make it clear like pretty quickly that like, okay, like this wasn't designed in the sense that like will the plasma gun kill it? And that was part of, we tried to do a little thing with it. One of Johnny's inquisitors sort of teleports in and then just immediately kind of gets crippled and killed. Like we wanted to, that was one other like small narrative element that we wanted to convey. Like think of something else, try to do something else without us just saying like one thought we had, we wanted to make sure the little Arvis lighter ship was on the board, and the thought that maybe someone would think like, well, let's just get into this and crash it into the lighthouse, like the beacon. Like maybe if we
cool.
destroy the Fresnel lens, that would do something. But we wanted things there and options just to prime in people's creativity to result in something cooler than just these rote rules. And all of that is hard to convey, and it was hard to put together a rule system that allowed for some of that. And like there's always stuff's always going to break down with this, things you don't think about, different people's play styles and what they value. So that's always a difficult thing, but just trying to encourage people to be fluid throughout the whole thing I think helps. And I'm happy that it seemed to work out as well as it did and people really got on board with it.
Yeah, I thought it worked really well. I'm very impressed with how well everything worked, and I think part of that was just you had a good group of people playing the game, and I'll second Nick's comment about just how great hanging out with everybody was, and as much fun as I had in the game. The times between the games and meeting everybody and talking, it's such a solitary hobby for the most of us. Like, I personally don't play games apart from these events. And it's not really like I'm looking for more games. About one to two games every year seems to satisfy me. But
that's sufficient.
and most of the time I'm just on my own making little guys, and it's just really great meeting up with people who appreciate what you're doing and can talk about it. And turns out we also all have a lot of shared reference points. So it all just feels supernatural. Not supernatural, but very natural.
That too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I felt that like so I played 3 games on the Saturday of the event, and like those were great. Like my first game was with Gage, and me and Gage, I feel like we both didn't really know what we were doing. We got the wound rules totally wrong, but we had a great time. And then like I played a second game with Sam and Colt and Tim, and that was like in the Cool Zone Mortalis board that Bill made, like that was inspired by the Shibboleth one, which was wicked because like I've like admired Shibboleth's like that corridor board
Lesotho,
that he made
2012 or
yeah. So
Isaac was at
it was really fun to play on that. And then I played the final game where Adam just sat in a corner and shot a bunch of shrines, and that was still fun. But then on Sunday, I felt like I was good. Like I'd had so much fun on Saturday that I might like drop into a game later, but I was also just happy to sit there and like chat with people and like and spend time like socializing and just going around and seeing like the different games and what was going on. And it was totally fulfilling, even though I didn't play any games on the Sunday.
Well, yeah, so that was one of the other things we tried to set up as well, because we've been at plenty of these events too, and have learned that you don't necessarily have to be playing games all the time to have fun. So we wanted to sort of set it up in a way where we'd make sure like you'd play at least one game at the start, and then have it a little more open to just say like, hey, maybe you've met these people and their work and stuff, and you'd like to actually play a game with them, so like you can like go up to them and ask them, hey, would you like to play the next game and stuff like that. And if like after the first two games you're like, I'm good for now, I'd rather just chat and watch other people play games and stuff, like that's fun too.
I feel a lot of us do have the tendency to not want to play games or want to just pull back. And part of, I'm glad that Bill really worked and was like really adamant that like we really need these scenarios. We need a bunch of scenarios. And because I think that slight structure helped. Like, sure, we kind of used some of the tarot cards Martin had created to sort of randomize where people are in the scenario they're doing. But then after that, it's just like play with who you want. But I think having those scenarios there, at least to a little degree, made it easier for people to like, let's play another one. Like, let's see what this scenario is about. And I think,
and like when you want to play with someone, you have something you can jump off from. You can be like, okay, well, let's do this thing. Okay, how are we starting this game? Oh, we're going to start it like this.
Yeah, we printed out a little book with the scenarios and stuff as well, such that
colored printouts with art like you guys did. Like, I don't know if this happens at all the 28 events, but I was so impressed. Like, you gave us the tarot cards. Everyone got a deck of 13 tarot cards. You got this beautiful book with all the scenarios in it and all the art in it. Like, you got all these shirts printed. It was high production value.
A lot of the events you've gone to, there's often at least some component of a physical element, but I think those artifacts are really fun, first of all, but help facilitate things and make it memorable. And so we wanted to try to do as much of that as we could. Like the Curse of the Alabaster thing, they had a set of tarot cards, and that was fun. And then also just because we got Martin involved in making early in the Vastarian thing, like about a year ago, we commissioned him to do some art of some various cultists just to help convey to people the diversity and interesting things that could be there. And then it just seemed like a natural extension that like, perhaps he could do some cards for this. And we wanted to make sure everyone got a copy of it just because. And also we wanted to not have rules on those cards. Like, we wanted it such that they could be creatively used. Adam's holding up the ones from Curse of the Alabaster, and they're super cool, with some like John Blanchard. They, however, do have like rules specific to the event, which I mean, you can obviously ignore and do what you want, but I like the concept of really detaching it from any rule system to
I really like that.
Well, it worked great. It worked great at the end. Yeah, at the end of
like the final battle, when it was like, and like when Isaac was talking about it and like realizing we were like outmatched for these like demons, and it just felt like this like weird psychic battle where like you guys put down, you put like 10 psychers, and each psycher had a card in front of them, and then 3 cards were in front of the demon. And
so we asked everyone together to kind of come up with a cool mechanical way to potentially defeat the demons, and Jimmy was the one who eventually came up with a cool way to use the tarot cards for the event to sort of mimic a wizard fight on a grander scale.
Yeah. And like it was fun because like it was decided like how can kind of like in a group like what can we do here, and then all or the majority of the psychers kind of teleported or found their way up to the lands to try to combine their powers, and then determined that like well there were enough psychers here that each one of them could be given one of the tarot cards, and there were 3 left over. And then it was using another deck, like we would draw cards, and if it was one of the psychers, their kind of life would get snuffed out as they were trying to put like all of their psychic energy and being into this kind of titanic battle. And like that was something like we didn't come up with that beforehand, but I think setting it up as we did, trying to get kind of this group think session of how we can approach this, facilitated that happening, and it resulted in like just something that was to me bigger than the sum of the parts. It was just so cool and climactic and kind of tense, and like that's just so fun and so neat, and a testament to like how cool some of this emergent storytelling can be. And really happy and excited about it.
Yeah, I thought it was like a really fitting, and it's kind of crazy that wasn't the plan, because it seemed like it felt like a movie. I know that a lot of people make fun of like how there was that one edition of 40K, they talked about making cinematic moments a lot. I think some 40K podcasts always used to make fun of cinematic moments, but the whole weekend felt like a lot of cinematic moments. But that felt like, well, we've done everything we can on the physical plane, so it's like it's only fitting that the finale of the story happens on another level of existence. And so looking into the light, which I will say Johnny had real working lights in that lighthouse, which I think
he did.
really added a lot. And I loved that it was a super bright pink light at the lighthouse, which I don't think was an intentional reference to a favorite book of mine by Philip K. Dick, but in Valis, there's a pink light that is actually like an alien satellite. It's also Jesus, that like causes you to realize you're living in a Gnostic prison, which is actually Philip K. Dick had like a psychotic break, and where he had like a migraine basically and saw a pink light. But so for me, getting to have my navigator bathe in the pink light and then transcend to another plane where it almost as if the models understood they were game pieces on a board with cards in front of them is kind of like how I read it. That like, and they had their chance to try to control the outcome on a meta level. If only we had like a pink light bathing those cards over there, or there was like on a pink table. That would have been perfect. But
I think Johnny
put it in
actually
Mr. Pink's hat.
Filmed the kind of drawing and all that stuff. But and
nice.
So I think that's just part of like what makes events and things like this cool, is just so many creative and people are there and wanting to have a good time and wanting to create and do interesting things, that it's just very fertile and primed for that sort of thing. And even myself, like I went in with the intent of really not playing at all, because I planned to primarily focus on photographing things, because I want to be able to, at least to some small fraction, convey like how cool this is to get other people excited about it. But even in that process, we in a lot of the scenarios tried to build in NPCs and so forth that could just be randomized how they were controlled. But it was also a good opportunity if someone didn't want to play another game, they could potentially just hop in and GM something, like do some NPCs. And for I think like all of the games, I was able to do some of that, which was fun. So I still could get involved, even though I didn't even have a warband. And like that, I think there's a lot of fun there, that even for a lot of events like this, even if you don't have a warband, like you don't need it. Or like a bunch of people sent us some cool things like Nikki's Adeptus Mechanicus, Nick or Cordal from the UK, he sent this cool Ordo Hereticus Sin Eater thing that was there to devour saints and psychers, and it was fun to include them. And by doing that and incorporating other people's visions, like I think it just strengthens everything and makes it more interesting. And it was nice to both photograph that stuff and just get it involved in the stuff we were doing. And yeah, it was
And
just
like,
really fun.
I don't know if this is. Oh, I wanted to ask if you guys had a picture of the final boss. There's like a grayed out or a blurred out picture of the final boss behind one of Isaac's miniatures, but that thing was. Eli
Yeah.
did amazing work on these. Like I guess you interviewed Eli, but I hope that there will be a video version where you just show Eli's amazing work because he created nightmares. Like
A lot of
I
them.
remember seeing the pictures from Jalita, like when Cody did it, and like that weird floaty blob thing with the face on it that he had as like the final nightmare, and
Oh,
Eli
yeah,
knocked
yeah.
the final nightmares out of the park, I think. But I was just gonna say, Eric, I don't know what it's like at other Ink 28 events, but I don't know that I've ever seen photos of this high quality coming out of an Ink 28 event, especially like the day after it wrapped. So it's so valuable that you were there and that you were doing all that work. Like this picture that's up right now with like Eli's one horror in the front and the other horror in the back, and that little tiny dude. This looks like it was shot in like a studio setup. This is just you on the board with like your camera and your flash, right?
That's right.
Did you like? It's so good.
Well,
So I really
that is
appreciate you doing
something.
that.
Well, thank you. But that is something that I have, having gone to various events like this, I've become increasingly interested in photography. And I was always, or kind of dissatisfied with the photos I had gotten. And I mean, some of that was like I knew nothing about photography or just had a cell phone. And admittedly, I'm glad cell phones have become what they have been, such that
Mhm.
everyone can participate in taking photos, which wouldn't have been like that 20 years ago. And towards that end, like I even brought a film camera, like a Nikon F3 from 1981 that I used and took some photos that still have to be developed, but it is a hell of a lot harder being stuck with a single ISO film speed, and like the flash isn't like TTL and you don't have good lighting and such. So has gotten increasingly easier, and I'm glad for all the events that we have gone to. I still have photos from phones, but so much of the photos I got, even in more recent things where I had like a nicer mirrorless camera, too many of the photos that I felt I was taking were just like documentary style, or like
Mhm.
trying to document a moment, just that this happened, like just a snap with a cell phone, like, yep, I want to remember this grocery list, take a picture, but like no effort at composition. And like I've increasingly wanted to get better and do more than that, because at the end of the day, showing photos like that, like 45-degree angles above the miniatures, like if you put that even on Instagram or something, like it's so easy for it to just wash over you. It's just like, ah, this is 30 pictures of like clearly a game was played here. There's some dice over there, but like
Well, that
there's
miniature looks really cool. Oh wait, how do I want to see
I
more of that
can't even
miniature?
see
Like,
it. And I feel it's
yeah,
just easy for it to just wash over you and like you hardly even look at it. And
yeah.
And like there's all these like blurry people in the background and lights, and like I always thought it was kind of impossible to take good actual gameplay photos because you have bad lighting and no
Mhm.
like clear backdrops.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this worked really well. I think part of that is the terrain had enough like verticality at the edges, so
Yeah.
you were able to get in there and
Yeah.
have some defined backgrounds so that the miniatures could really pop. But I think having a good camera and a good photographer really taking the
Yeah.
time to set up,
Absolutely.
make sure the framing was working, made a huge
Yeah,
difference.
I haven't got to look too closely at the ones for like the final lighthouse stuff. The fact that they're so tall, like, is harder to deal with, but I still think I got some good shots. But yeah, I wanted to be, because even like stuff at pictures I took at Adepticon earlier this year, I didn't think I did the best job. And to be honest, looking back through some of the Mordheim 2019 photos, Nikki was at that event, and like the best photos of that event were her
Nikki was
photos.
there.
Yes, she made an awesome Sisters of
So
Sigmar
good.
warband, but it
Okay.
was right before she started working at GW
Okay,
as like a
gotcha. Yeah.
concept artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she had this like little maybe Canon digital camera. It might have even been a fixed lens thing, but like she really would get down on the model's level and like capture a scene, like make like a piece of
Mhm.
artwork or something. And
One
I want
thing that
to try to do
I just want to tell
something.
everyone this, that I learned this, and this is like Eric has real stuff, but if you don't have real cameras and you're taking pictures of miniatures, the one tip you need is to take your camera and instead of holding it with the camera at the top of it, hold it with the camera at the bottom and put your camera down into the terrain with your phone
Mm-hmm.
and take it with your camera being like right above the board level. I never knew that. So I was always getting the like 45-degree from above the miniature, but as soon as you flip your camera around and make like a reverse periscope, you can like move it through the terrain, and that's just my
genius.
key tip. Yeah,
That's genius. I thought the most I would do is go landscape, but yeah, going upside down.
I think just being more present when you're taking the photos helps a
Mm-hmm.
lot. Like, because you can, and like, there are already a lot of amazing photos being posted on Instagram from people who participated that are amazing that were just taken with a phone. And like, it, the most important thing is just the person's eye and being present in particular in what you're doing. But obviously, like a nicer camera helps because you can let in more light and all these things. But
You can
yeah,
play around with what's in focus and not in focus.
being present in the moment helps a lot. And I feel this year started to shoot on film due to my grandfather gifting me some of his older film cameras. And that doing that and being pulled away, I can't just look on a screen or something and having to manually focus and things like this made me
you have to
forced me
think.
to focus a little bit more and think more. And I had already started to do that and had been dissatisfied with some of the other photos I took at things. But that and just being wanting to better document this really pushed me to try to do better. And I'm happy to say it looks like that will have happened, but I have a lot of photos to still go
No,
through.
you did, man. Like the few you're showing right now, like this is what the models look like. That whole thing with like, oh, the models look better than the pictures. Like you captured them, you nailed them.
Well, so
You did such a good job.
going back to the Mordheim event where Nikki brought her own board that folded out of like a wooden box. And so there was a lot of verticality and stuff to it. And just how the box was made for that board, it facilitated you taking better photos as well, because it was sort of elevated on different levels and it was easier even if you weren't thinking and you just took a picture. It was sort of like straight on viewing the models. So a very cool way to do things that you don't really see very frequently.
I don't want to belabor this too much. I also realized since I wasn't going to be playing like as a cult itself in the warband, like I wasn't going to be able to like write a battle report or something for every single game. So like I wanted to try to get shots that captured a moment and some element or essence of that game that just seeing it by itself kind of told a story and could be a memorial to that thing it happened. Because I wasn't going to be there that I could every dice I rolled I could take a picture or something. And fortunately I was able to do a little of that, particularly in game 2, the wizard fight game that I hope to be able to chronicle a bit, and maybe I'll share some of this with you, Isaac, to try to get some of your insights to like make it more reflective of some of the narrative elements that happened there. But a lot of saints and psychers died that day, or at the very least were sucked into the warp.
Well, so I think that wizard fight in that game was the first instance, at least that I saw, in terms of the games being played, where the psychic presence and the battle of wills and stuff of different people was very present. Because one of the big aspects of the setting was this notion that a whole ton of new powerful psychers were born out of almost like thin air. And we certainly encouraged people to come up with their own psychic powers, and Bill and the three of us came up with some generic ones that I think worked okay. But it was neat seeing people come up with different ideas, and then some of those were other people picked up on those and started using them as well. Yeah, so like that, I think that wizard fight was the start of the
psychic escalation of the event. Because we struggled a bit of like how to get psychic powers to be meaningful in the game, because like in Mordheim, they're not really meaningful. You have like maybe a wizard or something. They have a single spell. They never cast it, or it never works. Or like you randomize and like you get the power that doesn't work, or like doesn't affect your warband.
I really liked how you did it.
In every version of Necromunda, psychic powers have just been like a gun that you have to take a leadership test to
shoot.
be able to use, and then you have to roll the hit, and then you might die.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was nice to have psychic powers that were actually kind of fun to use.
And like a lot of them still probably, some of them in there were probably never used throughout the whole event. But that was, again, like we wanted to have like, this is some stuff you could do, but we'd much rather you think about like the cult you created, what their priorities are, what they value, and use that to do something. And even if you didn't write it up before the event, like as stuff was happening, like how might you approach that? How might they try to harness their psychic prowess to do something? And yeah, it was just great to see people creatively solve problems.
I feel like the teleport spell was the definite MVP. People use
like
that all over the
movement
place.
Sort of spells are always great, and that was the start of the wizard fight conundrum of being a beta class psyker being teleported around, and
then Adam just using the teleport ability to be a small child, picking up people's miniatures and slamming them together on the table. That was awesome.
Yeah. Brad actually came up with a wizard fight idea where it was, you would essentially take like a psychic test. Each player would roll 2 6-sided dice and add their faith value to it, and whoever had the highest value would just win, and the other person would just bypass wounding, bypass everything, and just roll on the injury chart, which is pretty brutal. But
isn't there used to be a 40k Eldar thing that was that. There was like an Eldar psychic power that it was like
something like that, a bit like that. But and using that resulted in some pretty hilarious things. Adam has a picture of the beta class psyker, which is actually a model created by Weird Witticism. He's a really cool creator, makes lots of neat things, and plays with scale a bit. But I've had the model for a few years now, and it was nice to be able to get them into a game and be involved in Vastarian.
My favorite in-game moment was Brad trying to use that spell, failing Perils of the Warp, turning into a giant friggin' demon, and having to just go toe-to-toe with him, with my one guy with the sledgehammer. Who wanted to piece, but it didn't.
Oh, he didn't have. He dropped his sledgehammer earlier.
He had his fishnet.
So
right, he dropped his hammer.
He didn't have time to pick up his hammer. But when Brad Saint erupted into like a demon spawn,
there we go.
He felt inspired to slay the beast, but he didn't have time to get his hammer.
He had a fishing net. That's all he had. He tried to entangle that giant monstrosity that Eli made with a fishing net.
Which was from Curse of the Alabaster, like I suggested. So that goes back to 2016.
And then after his heroic effort, he was very brutally slain. Or he was taken out of action almost immediately.
But Brad created Wizard Fight and used it every opportunity he could throughout all of his games and managed to never win a Wizard Fight.
I thought we weren't going to spoil that part. I thought that was the tease for Brad's interview.
Well.
Well, we talked to Brad a little bit, and
I'm sure he'll have something to say about it, but it's
Okay.
fun. It was fun. Yeah.
I got to run soon.
Yeah, we've been talking for a while.
I guess maybe with that in mind, like we've been talking for a while, could draw this to a close. Do either of you have any kind of last things you'd like to add or say just to wrap things up?
I'd just like to thank everybody for all the work that they put in. I've never organized anything like this because I know how much work it takes. And everybody has different types of skills that they bring to the hobby, and I think like people who have podcasts and blogs and document these types of events and kind of archive them for the future, like you guys have been doing with your blog and all these podcasts. Like I think that's really key and is a way that a lot of people get to discover them. But also the type of people who connect people with other people and make these things happen. And like Bill did so much work. I know logistically, I still don't know exactly what his job is in the military, I take it, but he seems like he's very good at managing complicated logistics, and everything worked really well. But yeah, just everybody made so many, we talked about Eli making the crazy monsters, Johnny making the crazy terrain, Bill making the terrain, and then everybody making such fun groups. It's just it wouldn't have been the same without all the hard work.
No, yeah, I agree. And thank you for that. And like, yeah, Bill, you're the reason it happened. Like I feel you came up with some ideas and so forth, but I don't feel like the sort of person who could have easily done something like that. I don't think it's quite in my skill set, but maybe that speaks to like if you do have an idea, like reach out to other people and like
Yeah.
it's best when it's done together as a community, and this certainly worked that way, and everyone does have things they're best at, and
Are
working
excited to
together
work
with other
towards.
people to put on something like this can really be synergistic.
Yeah, and I just feel so fortunate to have been part of it. That Bill took another run at it after doing the Mordheim one. I firmly believe that Bill's going to do another thing in 2 years, and we can all help him. We can all help him make that a reality. But it was so cool, and just like everyone, like Martin and Martin's art, and like the fact that we had a board there from Definitely Not Panicking. Like that was I'd never seen his stuff in person. Like seeing that in person, totally not panicking. Why do I always think it's definitely? I don't know. Like so many, and like
Navigator
Hydra sent like
were on there.
Saints from like Germany and like all kind. There's someone else who I don't really know who sent like a war band and so much stuff.
Yeah,
like so
one
much
of
collaboration.
Hydra's Saints with like the Angel Saint, like they were flying around the lighthouse, got a bunch of cool shots of them, and they seemed
sick.
very fitting to be flying up around there, haunting that lighthouse.
Oh, I look forward to seeing those pictures. And like I don't know. I wasn't able to like help out with the pre-planning of everything, but like I feel like we need to take your awesome pictures, Eric, and then like make a video kind of like that one Bill made with the creepy music and like the stills and stuff, and maybe put like a voiceover on it. I'd be happy to help out with that, like a rap kind of video for the event.
Yeah, it would be fun because I had kind of intended to do a thing like that and put together right before the event and put a couple of like kind of atmospheric photos and have some like little quotes and text to, I don't know, get people in the mood and that sort of narrative spirit. And ended up just making a post about it that had some little quotes and things about why everyone was kind of converging in this one place that I think was cool, but it would have been better as a video, and maybe that can happen because there are so many talented people. Like Eli makes all sorts of cool music. Nikki, she does as well, and how Greg makes some no input mixing type stuff, which admittedly I did make a little video shortly after Bill that used one of Greg's kind of noise pieces. So yeah, it would be very cool to put some of that stuff together to also again just try to be able to share this more broadly to show people that like they could be involved in a thing like this, and that has
Yeah.
been an effort at all of this to like throughout the way show like, hey, these are the rules we were using, or was the intent, and we will likely at some point soon post like the rules package we used as well as all the
A
scenarios
lot of
and
people have
stuff.
asked. A lot of people have commented on like my stories and stuff, being like, "What rules did you use? How can I find them?" So people are very keen. I've put them to the website, but your website, but definitely post that.
So we'll put it up there, but
And like not
so
just the Vastarian like scenarios, but also just like the Inc 28 simplified D6 rules or whatever. Like those as well. You should share them.
Also, sort of related to what we were just talking about, if either of you have other ideas of a cool way we could present different aspects of it, like, we'd certainly be all ears for that. Because, again, yeah, there are lots of different ways we could present a lot of the things, and if people have cool ideas and interesting ways to do it, we'd certainly be willing to explore those.
lots of stories to be told.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys, for making the time both to do the event and to like talk to us. And it was so cool to talk about it so soon thereafter, like while it was like still fresh in our minds.
Yeah,
I'm still buzzing.
Really happy that you both were able to attend and were able to take away some of your precious time to chat with us so soon after the event as well when it was fresh. Really, really appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun. Nice to kind of transition out of the event back into real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. Right. Yeah. Well, again, thank you, everybody. And yeah, hope to talk to you both soon. Yep. See you, everybody.
Over and out.
We did it.
Heck yeah.
We did it.
Incredible.
No, but yeah, if you have any cool ideas about different, like even just like one part that we could present in a different way, like we're certainly all ears. Because yeah, there are lots of little stories that we could tell or focus on. We talked a little bit with Martin about trying to put together like some document sort of walking through some of the stuff that happened, which I think would be cool, but we still have a lot of stuff to think about.
I want Dave Taylor to take Eric's pictures and make some kind of little book with all the war bands. I don't know how that happens, but I think I would be willing to pay for that.
I mean, Dave Taylor,
not all of it.
Dave Taylor lives like 20 minutes from me.
Oh, he does? Okay, well,
yeah,
not like
I play games with him.
Like, I just think that would be so cool if I don't know if it's like, if it's cheaper to do soft cover, you can do soft cover, or I don't know, some small hardcover thing, but it would be so cool to have like a book, because I think you took pictures of all the war bands or something like, right? And
just a large portion of them. Sadly, I didn't quite get all of them, but I'm sure I can in some capacity, or at the very least got nice pictures of most of the things, if not like focus stacked macro sort of stuff as well.
Yeah.
Shane
made a good suggestion. You should accost the group chat to submit 2 to 3 sentences of the favorite moments to throw that into a remembrancer thing.
It's a good idea.
That's a good thought.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. All right, I really got to run.
Yeah,
thank you both
everybody.
so much. Isaac, it was amazing meeting you and seeing your shit in person. I've loved your stuff for so long. Like, thank you. And hopefully I'll see you guys all again soon.
It was great meeting you too.
Yeah.
Thanks.
See ya.
Night.
Yep.
Yeah, night. Yeah, and I think there are a lot of cool navigator sort of beaconite things that I foresee myself contacting you, Isaac, to get your input to perhaps better write up some of the things more from your perspective of how, because I think that could be cool.
Sure. Be fun.
But yeah, still lots of photos to go through. I still have like over 1,000 to scroll through and edit. So
I appreciate you taking all those photos and doing
that. I'm glad I have
that.
them.
Yeah, I'm excited to see more of them.
Greg took a bunch too, so I think there'll be some there too to look at. But
heck yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I think it's also approaching my.
Yeah.
No.
Thanks for
I won't say
joining us.
bedtime, but
Yeah. I mean, I should go to bed. I have to be up at like 6 tomorrow.
Yeah.
Gross.
All right. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Isaac.
Thank you for taking the time.
yeah,
And
anytime.
thanks.
Anytime. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
See ya.
And thanks everybody for listening and
Yeah.
commenting there. But yeah.
Yes, expect to see
everybody.
more from the blog and stuff soon, and yeah, don't hesitate to contact us and ask questions, etc. But yeah,
I guess this is why podcast hosts develop like a sign-off phrase, right?
Over
so
now.
A clear way of
yeah,
over now. Over.
Yeah. Thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Keep on enjoying the hobby. Stay healthy, safe, etc. We'll hopefully talk to you again soon. Until next time, over and out.